Did you know that one of America's most infamous politicians downed a quart of liquor daily during his notorious hearings? Or that a British Prime Minister once vomited in Parliament after 3 bottles of port? Get ready for a wild ride through history as we reveal 10 politicians who mixed booze with power. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great. Thank you so much. Now, back to the video. Number 1. Joseph McCarthy. As we dive into this intoxicating journey, let's start with a man who took liquid courage to a whole new level. Ever wonder how much booze it takes to fuel a nationwide witch hunt? For Joseph McCarthy, the answer was a staggering quart of liquor per day. But how did this heavy drinking shape one of the most controversial chapters in American political history? In the 1950s, Senator Joseph McCarthy rose to power during the Cold War, leading a crusade against alleged communist infiltration in the U.S. government. His aggressive tactics and sensational accusations sparked a period of paranoia known as the Red Scare. What many didn't know at the time was that McCarthy's own personal demon was lurking in the shadows: alcoholism. During the infamous McCarthy hearings, the senator was reportedly consuming an entire quart of liquor each day. That's enough to make anyone see red. But for McCarthy, it wasn't just about quantity. He was known to go to pieces on the second or third drink and struggled to recover from his bouts of drinking. The pressures of the politically charged atmosphere likely worsened McCarthy's drinking problem, impacting his behavior and decision-making. Can you imagine trying to run a high-stakes political investigation while nursing a constant hangover? It's no wonder things started to unravel. Number 2. William Pitt. While McCarthy's drinking impacted American politics across the pond, another politician was making waves with his wine. Ever wonder how many bottles it takes to embarrass yourself in Parliament? For one British leader, the answer was 3, and the aftermath was messier than you might think. Welcome to the world of William Pitt, a man who could hold his own in political debates and hold his liquor. Well, most of the time. In 18th century Britain, heavy drinking wasn't just tolerated in politics. It was practically a job requirement. Taverns were like the unofficial offices of Parliament, where deals were struck and alliances formed over flowing glasses of port. Now, picture this: a heated parliamentary meeting, tensions running high, and William Pitt decides it's the perfect time to down not 1, not 2, but 3 bottles of port wine. What could possibly go wrong? Well, let's just say Pitt's stomach had a different opinion about his drinking prowess. In a moment that would live on in British political infamy, Pitt ended up vomiting behind the Speaker's chair. Talk about a political spill. But here's the kicker. This public display of overindulgence didn't necessarily hurt Pitt's reputation. In fact, some saw it as a sign of his masculinity and ability to hold his liquor. Number 3. George Washington. While the Brits were busy drinking in Parliament across the Atlantic, another politician was using booze for a very different purpose. Did you know George Washington had a sneaky way of keeping his troops in good spirits during the Revolutionary War? It involved a daily dose of something stronger than tea. You see, Washington wasn't just a military genius, he was also a bit of a mixologist. In the early days of America, wine was more than just a dinner companion. It was a symbol of sophistication and played a big role in society. But on the battlefield, Washington had something else in mind for his troops: rum. That's right, folks. Washington made the bold decision to provide his soldiers with daily rum rations. Now, before you start thinking this was just a big party in uniform, there was actually a method to his madness. Back then, alcohol wasn't just for fun. It was seen as a way to boost morale and keep soldiers motivated during tough times. Imagine you're a soldier in the Revolutionary War. You're cold, tired, and maybe even a little scared. Then along comes General Washington with a daily dose of liquid courage. Suddenly, those British redcoats don't seem so intimidating anymore. Number 4. Benjamin Franklin. Speaking of revolutionary figures and their relationship with alcohol, let's raise a glass to Benjamin Franklin. Did you know he had a famous quote about wine, beer, and water? The reason behind his preference for alcoholic drinks over water might shock you, and it's not what you'd expect. Franklin once quipped, "In wine, there is wisdom. In beer, there is freedom. In water, there is bacteria." Now, before you think old Ben was just looking for an excuse to party, there's more to this story than meets the eye. In Franklin's day, clean water was harder to come by than a British soldier at a Boston Tea Party. You see, back in the 18th century, unboiled water was often a recipe for disaster. It was crawling with nasty bacteria that could turn your stomach faster than a colonial tax collector. So, what was a thirsty founding father to do? Turn to the safer alternatives of beer and cider, of course. Franklin's pro-alcohol stance wasn't just about avoiding a nasty bout of dysentery. It reflected the scientific understanding of his time. People recognized the risks of drinking unclean water, and alcoholic beverages were seen as a healthier option. Talk about a different kind of doctor's orders. Number 5. Richard Nixon. While Franklin saw alcohol as a safer alternative to water, another president's drinking habits posed a far greater danger. Ever wonder how close America came to nuclear war because of one man's late-night cocktails? The story of Richard Nixon's relationship with alcohol might just make your hair stand on end. Richard Nixon's presidency was marked by intense pressure, from the Vietnam War to the Watergate scandal. But behind closed doors, Nixon had a secret weapon to cope with the stress: a nightly date with the bottle. This wasn't your average presidential nightcap, though. Nixon's drinking habits were so severe that they often left him incapacitated during crucial moments of his presidency. One night, Nixon's boozy antics led to a bizarre incident in a Miami restaurant. In a drunken stupor, he offered a White House job to a random woman he encountered. Can you imagine waking up the next day to realize you'd promised a stranger a position in the nation's highest office? Talk about a hangover! But Nixon's drinking wasn't just fodder for funny stories. In 1970, during a crisis involving North Korea shooting down a U.S. plane, Nixon was reportedly drunk and ranting. His advisor, Henry Kissinger, even recalled Nixon saying, "We've got to nuke Vietnam." The thought of an intoxicated president with access to nuclear weapons is enough to send chills down anyone's spine. Number 6. James Buchanan. Nixon's nuclear scare was terrifying, but he wasn't the only president with a drinking problem. Did you know that one president's boozy habits may have actually helped spark the Civil War? The story of James Buchanan, the whiskey president, might make you rethink everything you thought you knew about pre-Civil War America. James Buchanan, our 15th president, had a reputation that went far beyond politics. He was known for his impressive capacity for alcohol, particularly whiskey. We're not talking about a casual drink here and there. Reports suggest that Buchanan consumed a staggering 10 gallons of whiskey per week. That's enough to make even the hardiest drinker raise an eyebrow. But Buchanan's drinking wasn't just a personal matter. It may have had serious consequences for the nation. Imagine trying to navigate the complex political landscape of pre-Civil War America while nursing a constant hangover. Not exactly a recipe for success, right? Historians believe that Buchanan's heavy drinking might have impaired his judgment during this critical period. His inability to prevent the Civil War has long been criticized, and some argue that his alcoholism played a role in this failure. One journalist noted that the amount of Madeira and sherry consumed by Buchanan could fill more than one old cellar. Talk about a presidential cellar. Number 7. Boris Yeltsin. If you thought Buchanan's drinking was bad, wait until you hear about the leader who conducted an orchestra while drunk and nearly sparked an international incident. Boris Yeltsin's alcohol-soaked presidency wasn't just embarrassing. It became a symbol of Russia's rocky road to democracy. How did one man's fondness for vodka impact an entire nation's future? In the aftermath of the Soviet Union's collapse, Boris Yeltsin rose to power as Russia's first democratically elected president. But as the country grappled with its new identity, Yeltsin grappled with the bottle. His drinking habits weren't just a personal problem, they became a national and international spectacle. Imagine this. You're a world leader on a state visit to Washington, D.C. What's the first thing you do? If you're Boris Yeltsin, apparently, you strip down to your underwear and go on a pizza hunt. This wasn't just a one-time slip-up. Yeltsin's public drunkenness became so notorious that U.S. officials started scheduling meetings with him early in the day, hoping to catch him before he hit the vodka. But the real showstopper came during a visit to Berlin. Picture this: a military orchestra playing solemnly when suddenly a tipsy Yeltsin grabs the conductor's baton and starts leading the band himself. It's like something out of a comedy sketch, except it was all too real. Number 8. Ulysses S. Grant. While Yeltsin's antics shocked the world, another leader's drinking habits were shaping an entire nation decades earlier. How did a young boy sneaking sips of his father's cordial grow up to lead the Union Army to victory and become President of the United States? Ulysses S. Grant's journey from tippler to top brass is a tale you won't want to miss. Grant's affinity for alcohol began early in his life, with reports of him sneaking sips of his father's medicinal blackberry cordial as a child. But it was during his service in the Mexican-American War in 1848 that whiskey became his constant companion. Despite his drinking, Grant gained recognition as one of the best Union generals during the American Civil War, showcasing a high level of military prowess. Interestingly, historians suggest that Grant was a far better general than president. His reputation as a drinker often overshadowed his political achievements. Grant faced numerous setbacks due to his drinking, including a resignation from the Army in 1854 after appearing drunk at a public function. Yet, he consistently returned to alcohol, especially when away from his wife, Julia, who helped moderate his consumption. The cultural attitude towards alcoholism in 19th century America was complex. While alcoholism was often stigmatized, Grant's military success allowed him to maintain a level of respect despite his drinking. This reflects the changing perceptions of alcoholism in leadership roles, highlighting a time when heavy drinking was often overlooked in military contexts but scrutinized in political ones. Number 9. Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. From military men to monarchs, alcohol has played a surprising role in leadership. But what happens when gin becomes as much a part of royal life as crowns and corgis? The Queen Mother's relationship with alcohol tells a fascinating tale of changing social norms and royal indulgence. Queen Elizabeth, known as the Queen Mother, had quite the reputation for enjoying her drinks. Her daily schedule would make even the hardiest drinker raise an eyebrow. Picture this: a morning gin and Dubonnet, red wine with lunch, and 2 glasses of Veuve Clicquot champagne with dinner. Talk about living like royalty. But the Queen Mother's drinking habits didn't stop there. In 1923, she was known to enjoy a glass of sherry at 4:30 a.m. after returning from all-night parties. Now that's what we call stamina. Her ability to hold her liquor was legendary, reportedly consuming an astounding 70 units of alcohol per week. That's 5 times the current recommended limit for women in the UK. The Queen Mother's favorite drink, gin and Dubonnet, even became known as the Queen Mother cocktail. She was so fond of it that she carried a bottle of Dubonnet with her on outings. Talk about being prepared. Number 10. Winston Churchill. From royal cocktails to wartime whiskey, alcohol's influence on politics takes an unexpected turn. Ever wonder how a glass of spirits could become a secret weapon against the Nazis? One man's drinking habits might just rewrite your understanding of World War II diplomacy. Enter Winston Churchill, a leader whose relationship with alcohol was as complex as the war he fought. Churchill started his day with a glass of wine at breakfast and ended it with champagne late into the night. But don't mistake him for a mere drunk. This was a man who famously declared, "I have taken more out of alcohol than alcohol has taken out of me." Churchill's favorite tipple? Whiskey, particularly a Johnny Walker-based cocktail. But it wasn't just about personal enjoyment. Churchill wielded his drinking habits as a powerful diplomatic tool, often entertaining world leaders like Franklin D. Roosevelt and Joseph Stalin over glasses that never seemed to empty. These late-night drinking sessions, dubbed the Winston Hours, played a crucial role in cementing the alliance between Britain and the United States during World War II. Picture Churchill, glass in hand, navigating the treacherous waters of wartime diplomacy with a steady hand and a sharp mind. Despite his heavy drinking, Churchill's leadership during WO2 remained undiminished. His ability to hold his liquor while maintaining his wit and strategic thinking showcased a unique relationship between alcohol and political success.